I never imagined I'd end up here, on the edge of sanity and the universe, in the dark corridors of the dark matter prison. They said it was the highest security prison ship ever built, powered by the same dark matter that holds the cosmos together. Now, I know it's just a floating tomb, drifting through the void. My cell is a steel cage, barely large enough to stretch out in. The walls hum with the faint, constant vibration of the ship's engines, an omnipresent reminder that there's no escape. We're light years from any habitable planet, ensnared in this metal labyrinth. The air smells like oil and sweat, a thick, choking scent that sticks to the back of your throat. The guards are a different breed, cybernetic enhancements glinting under their skin, eyes replaced with cold mechanical lenses. They don't speak much, just bark orders and beat down anyone who steps out of line. The warden, Captain Grayson, is a ghost. His decrees ring through the intercoms, cold and detached, making his presence felt more than seen. I've been here 3 years, long enough to forget the color of the sky, the sound of birds, long enough for the darkness to seep into my bones. My bunkmate, Daryl, is a twitchy, hollow-eyed shadow of a man. Once, he was a chemist. Now he spends his days muttering about molecular structures and quantum fields, things that only make sense to him. I was a soldier, fought in the Outer Rim Wars, thought I'd seen the worst humanity had to offer. But nothing prepared me for this place. It's not just the physical confinement, it's the psychological erosion, the way the dark matter seems to get inside your head, twist your thoughts. It started small. Nightmares that felt too real, shadows that moved when they shouldn't. Then came the whispers. At first I thought it was just the other inmates, but soon I realized the voices were in my head. Speaking in tongues I couldn't understand. Daryl says it's the dark matter, that it's changing us, opening our minds to things we aren't meant to know. Today everything changed. The containment breach alarm went off, a blaring, nerve-shattering sound that drove us all to our knees. The lights dimmed and died, plunging the ship into a darkness so thick it felt alive. I stumbled to my feet, the air crackling with energy, and for the first time, I saw it. A shifting mass, blacker than the space outside, seeping through the walls. Daryl was staring at it, his eyes wide and unblinking. "It's beautiful," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's the beginning, and the end." I backed away, every instinct screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. The obsidian mass flowed like liquid, swallowing everything in its path. I felt it touch my skin, a cold burn that seared through my flesh and into my soul. Images flashed before my eyes, stars dying, worlds collapsing, an endless void consuming everything. Then came the pain. My body twisted, bones snapping, muscles tearing. I screamed, but no sound came out. It was as if the force was rewriting me, reshaping me into something else. I fell to the floor, convulsing, every nerve on fire. When I woke, the ship was silent. The breach had sealed itself, leaving behind only the wreckage of our minds. I looked at Daryl, or what was left of him. His eyes were gone, replaced by empty sockets that oozed black ichor. He was still muttering, his voice a low, inhuman growl. I dragged myself to my feet, every movement agony. The other inmates were in similar states, twisted and broken, their eyes filled with a knowledge that should not be. I saw myself in a shard of broken glass, my reflection distorted, alien. It had marked us all, left us changed. Now, as I sit in the darkness of my cell, I can feel it inside me, a living thing that whispers secrets of the universe. I understand now. We're not just prisoners of flesh and bone, but prisoners of the mind, held captive by the knowledge we were never meant to possess. It is a curse, a doorway to madness. In the silence, I hear the whispers growing louder. The prison has claimed us, and there is no escape. I stared at my reflection, distorted and warped in the broken glass. The obsidian mass had left its mark on me, my eyes now a dull yellow, skin stretched over protruding bones. I could feel it inside, crawling through my veins, whispering its dark secrets. The silence was thick, pressing in on all sides, only broken by the occasional, tortured moan from the other inmates. I forced myself to move, each step a struggle against the pain coursing through my body. The corridor outside my cell was a battlefield, the floor littered with broken bodies and twisted limbs. I stumbled over the remains of one of the guards, his cybernetic enhancements sparking weakly in the dim light. His face was frozen in a mask of terror, eyes wide and glassy. "Help me!" a voice croaked from the shadows. I turned, seeing another inmate, Marcus, dragging himself along the floor, his legs twisted at odd angles. He had been a big man once, strong and imposing. Now he was a broken shell, his flesh mottled and discolored. I crouched beside him, my movements slow and deliberate. "What happened to us?" I whispered, my voice rough and strained. "It's the dark matter," Marcus gasped, his breath coming in ragged bursts. "It's changing us, making us into something else." I didn't need to be told that. I could feel it in every cell of my body, an insidious force reshaping me from the inside out. "We need to get out of here," I said, more to myself than to him. "Find a way to stop this." Marcus let out a bitter laugh, a harsh, grating sound. "There's no way out," he said. "We're trapped. We're already dead." I looked around, my eyes searching for any sign of hope, but there was none. Just darkness and death. I felt a surge of anger, a burning rage that momentarily eclipsed the pain. I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I forced myself to stand, ignoring the protests of my battered body. "I'm not going to die here," I said, my voice firm. "We have to find the source, figure out what's causing this." Marcus shook his head, a slow, weary movement. "You're wasting your time," he muttered. "There's nothing left." I ignored him, turning away and limping down the corridor. Each step was a battle, but I refused to stop. I passed more bodies, some still twitching, others unnaturally still. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows moving with a life of their own. I could hear the whispers growing louder, voices speaking in tongues I couldn't understand. I reached the control room, the door hanging off its hinges. Inside, the monitors blinked with static, the consoles sparking and smoking. The warden, Captain Grayson, was slumped over the main console, his body contorted. His eyes snapped open as I approached, a twisted grin spreading across his face. "Welcome, inmate," he rasped, his voice dripping with malice. "Enjoying the hospitality?" I clenched my fists, the anger boiling inside me. "What did you do?" I demanded. "What the hell is happening to us?" Grayson laughed, a hollow, mocking sound. "You think I had anything to do with this?" he sneered. "We're all just pawns in a game we can't understand. The Force, it's beyond our control, beyond anything we could have imagined." I took a step closer, my teeth grinding in frustration. "There has to be a way to stop it," I insisted. "Some way to reverse it." Grayson's grin widened, his eyes gleaming with a sick pleasure. "You think you can fight it?" he taunted. "You think you can resist? It is a force of nature, unstoppable and insatiable. It will consume us all." I grabbed him by the collar, lifting him to face me. "Tell me how to stop it," I growled. Grayson's smile faltered, fear crossing his face. "You can't," he whispered, "but there might be a way to contain it. The core. If you can reach the core, you might be able to shut it down. But you'll never make it. You'll die before you even get close." I released him, letting him slump back to the floor. "I'll take my chances," I said, turning away. The corridors seemed to stretch on forever, an endless maze of steel and darkness. The silence amplified my steps, each footfall emphasizing how empty this place had become. I pushed forward, ignoring the pain that flared with every movement. The control room's half-open door creaked as I shoved it fully open, stepping into the chamber. The main console blinked with error messages, a chaotic symphony of red and amber lights. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on a wall-mounted terminal that seemed less damaged than the rest. I approached it cautiously, my fingers trembling as I tapped the screen. It came to life, displaying a schematic of the ship. The core was deep within, surrounded by layers of security protocols and barriers. If I could reach it, maybe I had a chance to shut it down, to stop it from spreading further. The door behind me hissed open, and I spun around, fists clenched. A figure stumbled in, his form barely recognizable. It was Jacob, another inmate, his face a twisted mask of agony. His skin was peeling away in chunks, revealing raw flesh underneath. He looked at me with hollow eyes, a silent plea for help. "Jacob!" I called out, my voice strained. "Can you walk?" He shook his head, a slow, painful movement. It hurts," he gasped, collapsing to the floor. "Please, make it stop." I knelt beside him, feeling the heat radiating from his wounds. The obsidian mass was eating him alive, transforming him into something else. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, a look of sheer terror on his face. "Stay back," he croaked. "Don't let it take you too." There was nothing I could do for him. The Force had claimed him just as it would claim us all if I didn't reach the core. I turned away, ignoring his feeble cries, and headed for the exit. The corridors blurred, each turn leading me deeper into the bowels of the ship. The whispers grew louder, a constant buzz in my mind. They spoke of endless darkness, of a universe uncaring and cold. I fought to keep my thoughts clear, to focus on the task at hand. The temperature plummeted as I descended, the walls oozing a dark, viscous substance. The stuff had breached every part of the ship, its insidious tendrils spreading like a cancer. I stumbled upon more bodies, twisted and broken, their faces contorted in eternal agony. I reached the inner sanctum, a massive door standing between me and the core. The keypad glowed faintly, a thin layer of frost covering it. I punched in the override code I'd seen on the terminal, my breath fogging in the icy air. The door shuddered, then slowly creaked open. The core chamber was a sight of pure horror. Black mass oozed from the central reactor. The floor was littered with bodies in various stages of transformation. I approached the reactor. The Force seemed to sense my presence, tendrils reaching out towards me. I could feel its pull, a magnetic force that drew me closer. I fought against it, my mind screaming in defiance. There was a control panel next to the reactor, its screen displaying static. I punched in the shutdown sequence, my fingers clumsy and slow. The reactor groaned, the obsidian mass writhing in response. I watched as the containment fields wavered and died, the reactor's hum growing louder. Suddenly, a hand grabbed my ankle, pulling me to the ground. I looked down to see Jacob, or what was left of him, his eyes burning with fury. "You can't stop it," he hissed, his voice a snarl. "It's too late." I kicked him away, scrambling to my feet. The reactor was reaching critical mass, the black mass churning violently. I had seconds, maybe less. I hit the final command, triggering the emergency containment protocol. The room exploded in a blinding flash of light. I was thrown back, my body slamming into the wall. Pain shot through me, but I forced myself to stay conscious. The reactor whined, the containment fields reactivating, slowly drawing the essence back. I woke to a different kind of silence, one that hummed with activity and tension. My body ached, each breath sending a jolt of pain through my chest. I struggled to sit up. The reactor room was a scene of chaos, with bodies scattered like discarded toys, but the obsidian mass had receded, contained within its magnetic prison. "Over here, we've got a live one!" a voice called out, sharp and authoritative. I turned my head slowly, seeing the glint of polished armor and the insignia of a rescue team. They moved with precision, scanning for survivors, assessing the damage. A pair of boots stopped in front of me, and I looked up to see a woman, her face stern and lined with experience. She crouched down, shining a light in my eyes. "Can you hear me? What's your name?" "Mark Tanner," I croaked, my throat dry. "All right, Tanner. We're here to get you out." she said, her voice steady. "Can you stand?" I nodded weakly, gripping her offered hand. The effort of rising to my feet sent waves of agony through my body, but I managed to stay upright. The woman, who I later learned was Lieutenant Harris, kept a firm grip on my arm, guiding me towards the rest of her team. The rescue team was well equipped, their suits insulated against the harsh environment. The sight of their equipment made me realize just how unprepared we had been for this nightmare. "Lieutenant, this one's stable," a medic called out, examining another survivor. "But he's in bad shape. We need to get them to the medbay, stat!" Harris nodded, then turned back to me. "Tanner, what the hell happened here? We've seen some crazy stuff, but this is something else." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. The dark matter, it got loose, changed us, made us see things, hear things. We tried to contain it, but it was too late. Her eyes narrowed, and she glanced at the reactor. "And now? Is it contained?" "For now," I replied, my voice shaking. "But it's still alive." Harris sighed. "All right, we need to get everyone out of here and secure this place." As we made our way through the ship, the full extent of the horror became clear. The obsidian mass had not just killed, it had transformed. Bodies were fused to the walls, their faces twisted in eternal agony. Limbs were stretched, skin flayed open to reveal the dark veins beneath. The team moved, their faces set in expressions of professional detachment. "Lieutenant, this corridor's clear," a soldier reported. "But the main access to the medbay is blocked. We'll have to find another route." "Understood," Harris said, turning to me. "Tanner, you know this ship better than we do. Can you get us there?" The medbay was our only hope for stabilizing the survivors, but the usual route was clogged with rubble and bodies. "Follow me," I said, leading them down a series of maintenance tunnels that bypassed the main corridors. We finally emerged into the medbay. The medics sprang into action, triaging the wounded and administering first aid. I sank into a chair, exhaustion overwhelming me. "Tanner," Harris said, kneeling beside me. "You did good. Command will have questions and we need answers." I met her gaze, seeing the weight of responsibility in her eyes. "It's not just a breach," I said slowly. "The force is sentient in a way. It knows we're here. It feeds on our fear, our pain." She frowned, processing my words. "Then we need to stop it before it gets stronger. We'll secure the survivors and then regroup. But Tanner, if there's anything else you haven't told us, now's the time." I hesitated, remembering the past few days as pain and madness. "There's one thing," I admitted. "The core. It's connected to the ship's systems. If we can't shut it down completely, it might find another way to spread. We need to destroy it. Utterly." Harris stood, her expression grim. "Then that's what we'll do. Stay here, rest. We'll handle the rest." The medbay was a haven compared to the rest of the ship, but the sense of security was an illusion. The pain had dulled, and I watched the medics work with a detached fascination. Lieutenant Harris returned, her face set in a hard line. "Tanner, we need to move. The core is still unstable and we can't risk another breach. We're setting charges to blow it. You're coming with us." I stood, my body protesting with every motion. "I know the way," I said, trying to mask the fatigue in my voice. "But it's not going to be easy. It knows we're here. It'll try to stop us." Harris nodded. "We're prepared for that. Just lead the way." We moved out, a tight formation of grim-faced soldiers and battered survivors. The corridors seemed narrower now, the walls closing in, as if the ship itself were alive and aware of our intentions. The first attack came swiftly. Dark tendrils burst from the walls, wrapping around one of the soldiers, pulling him into the darkness. His screams traveled through the corridor, cut short by a wet, crunching sound. The team opened fire, bullets tearing through the tendrils. But it was too late. "Keep moving!" Harris shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't stop for anything!" We pressed on, the sound of gunfire and the cries of the wounded filling the air. I led them through the maintenance tunnels, the route imprinted on my mind by desperation and fear. Twisted forms, once human, now mindless creatures of sinew and bone, charged at us from the shadows. We fought them off, but each encounter left us weaker. We finally reached the core chamber, the massive reactor looming before us. "Set the charges!" Harris ordered, her voice tight with urgency. "We don't have much time." The soldiers moved quickly, planting explosives around the reactor. The dark matter reacted to their presence, and I could feel its anger, its fear. It was alive, and it knew what we were doing. "Lieutenant," I said, "we need to be ready for one last push. It won't let us destroy it without a fight." Harris nodded, her face pale but determined. "We'll be ready. Just get us out of here once the charges are set." The seconds stretched into eternity as the explosives were armed. The black mass surged, tendrils lashing out, but we fought them off. Finally, the charges were set, the timer ticking down. "Go! Go!" Harris shouted, and we turned, sprinting for the exit. The corridor behind us exploded in a shower of sparks as the reactor began to overload. The obsidian mass screamed, a high-pitched wail that reverberated through the ship, shaking the very walls. We ran, the ground trembling beneath our feet, the air thick with smoke and the scent of burning metal. The whispers reached a fever pitch, but I kept moving, focused on the goal. We burst into the main corridor just as the core detonated. The shockwave hit us like a tidal wave, throwing us to the ground. I felt the heat, the force of the explosion, and then nothing but darkness. When I came to, the ship was silent, the whispers gone. I struggled to my feet, my body battered and bruised. Harris lay nearby, breathing but unconscious. The rest of the team was scattered, some stirring, others deathly still. The core was destroyed, the force contained. The ship was a graveyard, filled with the remnants of our struggle. I turned to Harris, shaking her awake. "We need to get out of here," I said, my voice hoarse. "There might be more of it out there." She groaned, sitting up slowly. "Yeah," she said, her voice shaky. "Let's get to the evac shuttle." We helped the survivors to their feet, moving as one towards the hangar. The ship shuddered as we limped towards the hangar, the structure groaning like a wounded beast. We moved in a tight formation, Harris at the front. I could feel something changing inside me. My skin prickled, an itch that no amount of scratching could satisfy. "Lieutenant," I called out, my voice strained, "we need to hurry." Harris glanced back, her eyes narrowing as she took in my pallor and the sweat beading on my forehead. She gave a curt nod, pushing us to move faster. We finally reached the hangar. "Get everyone on board," Harris ordered. The medics and soldiers scrambled to load the wounded. I lingered at the back, my skin now burning. I clenched my fists, trying to will the sensation away, but it only intensified. "Mark, get on the shuttle," Harris commanded, her tone brooking no argument. I took a step forward, then staggered. Harris was beside me in an instant, her hand gripping my arm, her eyes searching mine. "Something's wrong," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "I can feel it, changing me." Her expression hardened. "We'll get you help, just hang on." I nodded, but deep down I knew it was too late. The force had its hooks in me and it wasn't letting go. We boarded the shuttle, the hatch sealing shut behind us. The engines came to life and we lifted off, leaving the dying ship behind. The medbay on the shuttle was swamped with activity. Medics rushed to stabilize the wounded. Harris guided me to a cot, pushing me down gently but firmly. "Stay here," she said. "I'll get a medic." I lay back, the cold spreading through my limbs, my vision darkening at the edges. My skin rippled, the surface shifting, tiny black veins spreading like cracks in porcelain. A medic appeared, her face pale as she took in my condition. She scanned me with a handheld device. "Lieutenant, he's infected." Harris's jaw tightened. "Can you help him?" The medic shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know. The thing, it's rewriting his DNA." I've never seen anything like this. Harris turned to me, her expression torn between determination and dread. Mark, we're going to do everything we can. Just hold on. I nodded, but the pain was intensifying, my body rebelling against the changes. The whispers coalesced into a single, coherent thought. Submit. I clenched my teeth, fighting to hold on to my sanity. Harris, if I lose control, you have to stop me. Her eyes met mine, a silent understanding passing between us. I won't let it come to that, she said. But we both knew the truth. It was winning. The shuttle shuddered as we broke through the atmosphere, the med bay bathed in the cold light of the emergency lamps. The other survivors stared at me with fear and pity, their own trauma written in the lines of their faces. "Lieutenant!" a soldier called from the cockpit. "We've got company. Another ship is approaching fast." Harris cursed under her breath, moving to the front of the shuttle. "Identify yourself," she barked into the comms. "This is Captain Reynolds of the Starlight. We've received your distress signal. Prepare for docking." Harris glanced back at me, then responded, "Understood, Starlight. We have multiple casualties, including one with an active infection. We need immediate medical assistance." "Copy that," Reynolds replied. "We'll be ready. Hang tight." The docking procedure was swift. As they boarded, their eyes widened at the sight of me, the black veins now visible beneath my skin. A doctor approached, her face grim. "We need to isolate him," she said. "The dark matter is highly contagious in this state." Harris hesitated, then nodded. "Do what you need to do. Just try to save him." I was moved to a quarantine chamber, the walls lined with reflective panels that distorted my reflection. The cold was unbearable now, my thoughts slipping away like sand through my fingers. The doctor worked quickly, her hands steady despite the tension in the room. She injected me with a series of compounds, each one sending a new wave of pain through my body. But the force fought back, its presence a living, writhing thing inside me. "Stay with me, Mark," the doctor said, her voice a lifeline in the darkness. "We're going to beat this." But as the minutes passed, I felt my grip on reality slipping. The room darkened, the whispers growing louder until they were all I could hear. "Submit." I took a deep breath, the cold filling my lungs. "If I lose control," I gasped. "You have to stop me." The doctor's eyes met mine. "I will," she promised, "but we're not there yet. Fight, Mark, fight it." I closed my eyes, focusing on her voice, on the promise of survival. But deep down I knew the truth. It was inside me, changing me, and there was no going back. I lay on the cot, the cold metal biting into my skin. The whispers filled my mind, a constant, insidious murmur that eroded my thoughts. I could feel it inside me, spreading like a virus, rewriting my very essence. "Stay with me, Mark," she urged, injecting another dose of something into my arm. "We can fight this." I wanted to believe her, but the truth was undeniable. I was becoming its vessel, its conduit, and it was hungry for more. The door to the quarantine chamber slid open, and Lieutenant Harris stepped in, her expression hard and unreadable. She glanced at the doctor, then at me, her eyes lingering on the black veins that now crisscrossed my skin. "How is he?" she asked, her voice tight. The doctor shook her head, not meeting Harris's gaze. "He's stable for now, but the infection is progressing. I don't know how long we can keep it contained." Harris's jaw tightened and she turned to me. "Mark, can you hear me?" I nodded weakly, the effort draining what little strength I had left. "Yeah, I hear you." "We're running out of options," she said, her tone flat. "If we can't stop this, we might have to make a hard choice." I knew what she meant. If the force couldn't be contained, they would have to eliminate the threat. That meant me. I was a ticking time bomb, a potential catastrophe waiting to happen. "Do it," I whispered. "If it comes to that, do it." Harris's eyes softened just for a moment. "We're not there yet. We're going to try everything we can. Just hold on." The doctor administered another injection and a wave of numbness washed over me. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on anything other than the pain, the fear, the growing sense of inevitability. One night I woke to find Harris sitting beside my cot. Her face was drawn, shadows under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. "Mark," she said softly, "I need to know what it's like, what you're feeling." I took a shuddering breath, the effort sending a jolt of pain through my chest. "It's like a parasite. It's inside me, changing me. I can hear it all the time. It wants more. It wants to spread." She nodded, her expression grim. "We're working on a plan. There might be a way to isolate it, to extract it from you, but it's risky. And there's no guarantee it will work." I looked into her eyes, seeing the weight of the decision she was carrying. "Do it," I said. "Whatever it takes. I don't want to become one of them." Harris squeezed my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "We'll do everything we can, Mark. Just hang on a little longer." The next day, the doctor and her team began the preparations. They brought in equipment, machines that hummed with energy and filled the room with the scent of antiseptic. I was hooked up to monitors, sensors attached to my skin, the black veins stark against the pale flesh. "We're going to induce a coma," the doctor explained, her voice steady. "It will slow the progression, give us a chance to work." The idea of being unconscious, helpless, while the dark matter continued its invasion, was terrifying, but it was the only option. As the sedative took hold, the world around me faded to black. The last thing I saw was Harris's face. Her eyes filled with a determination that I clung to like a lifeline. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my mind a battleground between the sedatives and the insidious whispers. The cold seeped deeper into my bones and I could feel it tightening its grip on me, a force that would not be denied. In one moment of clarity, I opened my eyes to find Harris and the doctor standing over me. Their faces were grim, their expressions taut with worry. "We're ready," the doctor said, her voice trembling. "This is our last chance." Harris looked down at me. "We're going to fight this, Mark. You just have to hold on." I wanted to believe her, but the darkness was all-consuming, a black hole that threatened to swallow me whole. As the machines hummed to life and the procedure began, I closed my eyes, surrendering to the darkness one last time. I was a hostage to the dark energy. My body its vessel, my mind its playground. I drifted in the darkness, the sedatives numbing my body. Time lost all meaning, and I floated in a void, waiting for something, anything, to change. The last thing I remembered was the doctor's voice and the cold embrace of the coma. When I woke, the world had changed. My vision was distorted, shapes and shadows melding together. Slowly, my senses sharpened, and I became aware of my surroundings. I was no longer in the medbay. Instead, I stood in the middle of a ruined city, the sky a dark grey. Buildings lay in ruins, the streets littered with wreckage and bodies. I tried to move, but my body felt alien, unresponsive. I looked down at my hands, now monstrous, twisted forms, obsidian mass coursing through my veins. A sound drew my attention, and I turned to see an army of corrupted humans marching through the streets. Their eyes were empty, their movements mechanical, driven by a single unifying force. My force. I was leading them, the force using me as its vessel, its general in this twisted campaign. Panic surged within me, but I was trapped, a passenger in my own body. The whispers were no longer just background noise. They were commands, directives that I had no choice but to follow. I could feel its purpose, its goal, clear and unwavering: to enslave humanity, to build an empire of darkness. As we marched, people scattered before us, their faces masks of terror. The corrupted soldiers moved with precision, rounding up the survivors, binding them with tendrils. The captives' eyes glazed over, their resistance fading as the force took hold, converting them into obedient drones. We reached the city center, a plaza that had once been a place of gathering and life. Now it was a staging ground for the conquest. A throne of twisted metal and dark energy rose in the middle, and I was compelled to sit upon it. From this vantage point, I could see the full extent of the devastation we had wrought. I could feel the entity's satisfaction, its hunger for power and control being sated, but beneath that, I could sense something else. A burgeoning ambition, a desire not just to enslave humanity, but to reshape the world in its image. The corrupted humans assembled before me, their empty eyes fixed on me. They were waiting for orders, for guidance from their dark master. The realization hit me. I was the face of this apocalypse, the figurehead of the Dark Empire. In a moment of clarity, I thought of Harris, the doctor, and all those who had fought to save me. Their efforts had been in vain. The Force had won. My will was shattered, my defiance crushed under the tide of darkness. I was forced to rise, to lead my army once more. I was a prisoner in my own body, a pawn of the dark force. There was no hope, no salvation. The fight was over, and I had lost. We marched forward, the whispers guiding our steps as the world around us descended into eternal darkness.